Hey, it's Jenna with the Gianu System, and I recently had the absolute pleasure of doing a joint live with Dr. Adrienne Fletcher on Instagram. We're uploading it here so y'all can have access to it. There is some technical difficulty with the audio, so sometimes my audio will overlap Dr. Fletcher's audio, but it's still a fantastic conversation, and I think you're really going to enjoy it.
Good morning, y'all. My name is Dr. Adrienne Fletcher. I am a licensed psychologist and a EMDR certified therapist and EMDR approved consultant. Today, I'm going to be going live with the Gianu system, and why that's really important before I bring them on is that you understand that they are one of the systems that was negatively impacted by the release of a Grand Rounds video put on by McLean Hospital, a highly respected institution. And it takes a great deal of bravery and trust in me to be able to come on and talk with us this morning about their experience, and I just want you all to show them nothing but kindness and respect. I have said multiple times before that if somebody had stolen my content and made a presentation out of me, that I absolutely would not be okay and I would be a mess. So as a licensed clinical psychologist, I stand by the Gianu system, and I've had the opportunity to chat with them briefly, and I look forward for you all to get to know them.
Hey, how are you?
Oh my God, I'm so excited that we have chatted briefly already. And as I was nervous and getting ready to meet with you all, I had to like get up and go grab a crystal.
Okay, so which one did you grab?
I have manifestation, tiger's eye protection, and throat chakra. And I forget the name of the blue one.
Yes,
but
I'm obsessed. The throat chakra one. So me, I was like, I'm going to put away my dogs before we start this, and then my robot vacuum was in my bedroom, and I was like, they will not go in here. And now they're barking.
Okay. We can roll with all kinds of things. It's all right. It's all good. So good. It's all good. First, I just want to say that I'm sorry for what has happened, and I stand by you and with you, and I know that it takes a great deal of trust and courage even to agree to meet with me as a psychologist. And I want you to know that all of Adrienne is represented here today, not just the doctor part of me. And definitely have 17, who goes by age, very well and live in the background hanging out with us today. She would prefer just to take over the live completely. And I know you know what that's like, but I hope we can just have a heartfelt, honest conversation. And I'm curious on how you all are doing and if there's anything we can do as a community to support you.
And hi to Age. Totally understand how that is. A lot of times when we do lives, Lil's in the background like, can I do this? I think I would do this just fine. Thank you. We're doing better. It was very, very difficult. I was telling you the morning that they put the video on YouTube, I woke up and had a bunch of messages on my phone, people going, "Are you okay?" And I was like, well, that's not a good sign. Like, why wouldn't I be okay? And I checked. They said there's this video and it features you. I was able to watch the first like 7 minutes, and then like I couldn't, my heart, I was shaking, and I just started sobbing. It takes so much to be vulnerable on here. But then not only to be vulnerable and honest about the disorder, but to be okay enough with yourself to be playful with it. Like, so I use this example because people are like all the time when I make content that's like entertaining rather than educational, they're like, well, this isn't a matter to joke about. But I'm like, look, my friend had her brother tragically die as a teenager. And you want to know what she does all the time? She makes dead brother jokes constantly. Does it take away from the difficulty or the grieving? No. But it's a part of processing and living with something difficult.
Right.
And like, if I can't make light of this, like, it's going to be a lot harder to get through the more difficult aspects of it. And so to have finally gotten to that place
Yes.
where I was okay enough to not only make educational content, but to occasionally make a playful video, like the Guess Who one, which was shown in the video. It was just devastating to see that portrayed the way it was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And absolutely not okay. Absolutely not okay for that to have happened. And I agree with, I do the same. I call it edutainment. I can be educational and entertaining at the same time. And until you spend a moment, right, walking in our shoes, you don't really have a right to come into our space and tell us how we should and should not do things, because to cope with this disorder, right, is very difficult in and of itself. And if we can find ways to make light of it for us and it helps other people, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely. And I love entertainment. That's great.
And I love that, you know, when we talked earlier, like I was very honest with you to say that it's very difficult for me to be out and open, even in the way that I am. And I haven't even scratched the surface with my vulnerability. And I know people think I'm very vulnerable, but I don't come on and say which altars are out and why they're out. If you're, I know you can see it, because if you go through my Instagram, you can tell there's differences between them. And it's not easy to do. And so you're really braving the way for me. And I thank you all for that. It really is so inspirational, and you're so brave, because I told you too, like, I don't know how you deal with all the internet trolls and, you know, separate from the McLean situation. And I know that got worse for you after that happened, and, you know, and you're still standing and you're still sharing and you're still showing up. And that is admirable.
And yeah, it got a lot worse because the trolls were then emboldened. They felt like they had someone tell them that it was okay to be nasty to us. One of my favorite, because trolls are difficult to deal with, but one of my favorite interactions, sometimes we try and respond and get them to think critically about the things that they're saying.
Yeah, you have far more patience than I do. I'm just like, you know what? If you're going to come over here and attack me, delete.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times that's where we have to end. But we had one troll that we had been having a back and forth with for days, and several of us, and we didn't announce because it's, you know, we're just texting a response. Several different of us had responded, and to one of their responses, Lily replied like, you know, life is hard, and it's, you know, why be mean? And they were like, yeah, that sounds so juvenile. And we were like, oh my gosh, they just backwardly affirmed us because they didn't know that it was a younger alter replying to that. And to be like, well, you're sounding like a kid now. And we're like, you just caught on, right? Inadvertently, you just caught on to what's happening here. It was fantastic.
You're amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And how do you want to introduce yourself and tell, because, you know, I know some people that follow you are very much aware of who you are, but how would you like to introduce yourself to everybody? I probably didn't give you a proper introduction, and I apologize for that.
I'm Jenna, and we go by the Gianu system. That's when not all systems pick a system name. And when we were kind of thinking about that, there was a dream we had many years ago in which our heart was in all kinds of pieces, and it all came together and formed a dragon, and the dragon was named Gianu, and there's my little dragon is on that picture. So when we learned about DID, which was like 10 years later, the dream had been so vivid and beautiful, we'd written it down, and we were like, well, that, whatever that is, that's all of us. So when we thought about picking a name for all of us, that was it.
I love that. I love that. That's so cool. And you all are doing a whole bunch of things right now. I wanted to know, I do have a message for you from Annalyn McCord, and I'd like to share that with you if you are ready for that right now.
I told myself to bring in tissues just in case, and I didn't. So, all right.
We can cry. We can all cry together. Okay. So I let her know that I was meeting with you today, and she had let me know that you guys had spoken some, and she said, please tell her I said hi, and to please continue showing that the face of healing is I always say this word wrong. basically the antithesis to shame that the doctor was seemingly promoting. She is proof positive of that. She is what the healing journey looks like, and it's a journey, not the young doctor's narrow-minded destination. Tell her to keep doing what she's doing. The world needs more healing and the eradication of shame. Yeah. And I want you to know that her and I very much care about what happened. And again, we are so, so sorry. And if there's anything that we can do to continue to support you, we see you, we honor you, and we have your back.
That means a lot, and your support means a lot. And the just the pushback that I've seen has been really encouraging, because when the video first came out, it was like, is this what people think? Is this what they see? And to see medical professionals and people with DID being like, absolutely not. Like Anna Lynn said, like, we're about eradicating shame, not promoting it. And yeah, in the early days, we had a lot of shame and a lot of fear. And that's one of the reasons we do what we do online. Because it's so scary in the beginning. There's so much stigma around this disorder and so much misunderstanding and misinformation. And it was just a really scary first year. And so when we decided to be open about the disorder, it was with that in mind, so that other people wouldn't feel as alone and as afraid as we did.
Yeah, I don't think people truly get what it's like to live with this disorder, right? And I know you and I are both trying to provide the public with some understanding of what it actually is, but nobody truly, unless you live with it, understands the work that goes into it behind the scenes, right? And I think you, me, and Anna are all about the humor, because again, it's part of the coping, and also it's our stories to tell, and we can utilize humor in whatever way we feel is necessary for us. And I realized even more and more as I step forward and get a little bit more brave about talking about all of my different parts, you know, that I still have a lot of internalized stigma from my own field. And I was telling you this morning, like, I don't really know where I fit in the field of psychology, right? It's like I'm trying to help people understand. And at the same time, I don't necessarily believe or see that I have any allies in the mental health field. No one is, you know, other than NAMI, who has published an article, the American Psychiatric Association, another, but there's not a whole lot of people in the mental health field coming alongside me saying like, hey, we need to do this differently. And that's concerning, you know, and I trust my fellow dissociatives before I trust most people, because we just have a mutual understanding of what it's like to live with. And yeah, I think it's just a very powerful community to be a part of, and we do need more people speaking about it. And it's hard when we do speak about it and then we get attacked for speaking about it, because it makes it more scary for other people to come forward.
Yes,
and that's not okay.
The amount of people I saw that weekend after the McLean video say, I'm no longer going to be open about having this disorder, was heartbreaking. You know, because it takes so much courage to step into that in the first place, and then to be put back into shame and back into hiding is absolutely a step backwards.
Right. Yeah. Shame is just very, very dangerous.
We will talk about the muse that is Brene Brown when it comes to shame and
oh yes, I see that you and I, well, you and all of you and all of I, we have a mutual love for Brene Brown. I saw that throughout your feed. Atlas of the Heart. Hello, amazing. I know, I'm a little bit Brene Brown obsessed,
right,
but
same,
that's fine.
same. I have yet to encounter a Brene Brown book that I wasn't just like, so good.
Oh, well, here's a good quote for today, right? It's about like being attacked, right? It's like, well, if you're, what she always uses the quote from Theodore Roosevelt, right? Like, if you're also not in the arena getting your ass kicked, then I'm not interested in your feedback. Dare greatly, right?
Yes.
Daring greatly. That's what we're doing.
That's
here.
exactly what we're doing here. I had some friends in the LGBT community liken it to the beginnings of that movement, when people were first stepping out of the closet and were getting very much attacked, and I don't think it's quite on that level because they were also being criminalized, which we are not, but there's a very similar like stigma and fear around just who we inherently are. And to be open about that and just have the public say, no, you should not.
Right.
There's not a way to go back. After breathing freely for a little while, it's scarier to be open about it because, you know, I've seen the other end of what people can do with that information, but just being able to breathe freely, I can't go back to being like, nope, I'm totally just like you, like it's fine.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know if your parts have had this experience, but now that I let them out around certain people or they identify themselves at certain places, they don't want to have to go back into hiding either. And I know in the field they think, oh, if you engage the parts or if you let the parts have their time, then you're never going to get better. I call bullshit 100%. To all of it. If anything, I am living happier now than I ever have been in my whole life, and I nearly died a few times before. So, you know, I'll take it. If my parts want to put love into the world and provide edutainment, then they should be able to do that. Like, I'm so done with this. This
exactly. When we really started making progress on our healing journey was when we started letting the others front as themselves, not being like, well, you know, try and mask. Don't be like Anthony, especially, was very exuberant, and to be like, you can be exactly who you are. You don't have to tone it down. You don't have to pretend to be me. When I, as the host, like was like, okay, you be you. That's when we really started healing. That's when we really started cooperating, actually. Like,
yes. Because I feel like when the parts feel seen, heard, and validated, life changes. It gets a little easier. I hate that word easier, but it gets a little bit maybe more manageable and more enjoyable, right? There's less to hide and cover shit up, and I'm so over that. And I know I'm making a lot of people in my own life very uncomfortable, and they're just going to have to either get used to that or leave the circle. Like, I just don't have time for any more like inauthentic conversations or people in my world. It's too hard for me to manage.
Energy, and once you realize you don't have to, and absolutely, letting them just be has been well, and that's what dissociation is like. Nope, and pushing them away and saying, you know what, you are part of this, and you be you. No, it has been 100% the best. And I tell people when they're like, I'm afraid of letting them do that, I'm like, well, they're only going to get louder and do things sideways. Like, they'll still try and be, it just will more likely be unhealthy.
Yep. Amen. Ditto. All the things. Yeah. It's up to you. I asked just the community, like on Instagram polls or whatever, like if they had any questions just about life with DID, and we can both answer them if you're up for that. One of them was, how do you comfort littles when they are frightened or uncomfortable? And either you or I could go first. It doesn't matter.
For us, I love System Speaks Now Time is Safe Time. The first thing we do is try and be like, okay, so we're now. So if they're kind of stuck in a flashback or a trigger, to say, look, we're now. This is where we are, and it's safe. But always stuffies, like each of our littles has their own particular stuffed animal. Then activities that they can do and feel good about themselves. So for us, cartoon, like Disney movies, I'm sorry, all Disney movies, coloring, and like Crazy Eights is a big one for my littles. Like, it's a simple game, and they can feel connected without feeling the need to do anything except for play this game. And they're kind of validated in something they like and without feeling the need to do anything other than.
I love that. Yeah, we definitely have some squishmallow things going on. And I was telling you earlier, it's hard for me to figure out what to do with 10 right now because she doesn't feel like she fits with the littles, doesn't feel like she fits with the teens. So I'm going to take your suggestion and play some music and figure out what she likes, and then maybe expose her to different games and see what she might pick up there. But yeah, a lot of Care Bears over here, Care Bear cartoons. What's another one they like? It's old school, Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yes.
And those big crayons, like from kindergarten, you know, the big fat crayons. Yeah.
We have next to us, we have a whole thing of crayons, and we just leaning into it and letting everyone have their own thing. Like we keep next to us a thing of different colored pins, so whether it's a little or a big, they have their own thing. They can choose how they best feel represented and expressed, and always giving them an avenue as much as we have ability for to feel comfortable when they're out.
Yeah, I love that. And you and I were also talking earlier about like different clothing things and earrings, and how do you want to say a little bit more about that? Because I know our parts have a mutual love for fun accessories,
right?
Because parts have to have all the things.
I had someone be like, do you have a lot of things in your closet? And I was like, yes I do. Right? Like, it's our favorite store in town is this secondhand store, and they have the coolest stuff. And because it's a secondhand store, like, we can get several things and not feel too guilty about it. So we make sure to get different colors, different styles, and if it's having an alter be able to shop for themselves, oh my gosh, has been so empowering. Like the this is mine, the ownership that they then feel is people, well, how do we get alters to cooperate? We'll give them a stake in the life that you're living together.
Yes, boundaries and limits. I've had to set lots of limits with 17, lots of them, over on the spending aspect of things. And you and I talked earlier about I think we should weigh in for people on how, because lots of people will refer to different parts of themselves, and that's very different than living with DID. How do we even want to weigh in and clarify for that? Because we kind of talk about, like, do your parts literally take over and like take control of your body?
I know some people with DID, because they've had therapists like minimize using parts language, that's really triggering for them. And like, it's not triggering for us unless you're going to minimize us and be like, oh, well, everybody has parts. Yes, everybody experiences parts of self, but they don't experience parts of self that have amnesia for other parts of self, and parts of self that have distinctive, like, taste, sense of taste and smell, and their own, like, separate thoughts that are totally apart from and unaware of these other parts and, like, thoughts. Like, it's very, very distinct. It's like, How would you describe that?
Yeah. Same way. I just usually say, like, their parts have different thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, different characteristics, likes, dislikes, preferences for food, people, sexualities. Like, it's very complex. This isn't just like, oh, I have a part of me that doesn't want to go to dinner tonight and another part of me that does. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about. And people do forget the biggest piece is that this is caused by severe trauma. This isn't just because we want to have these different identities. We may have learned to accept them, but it, was caused by horrific abuse. And we forgot to give a little trigger warning.
We're
trigger
talking
warning
about things.
And I just think it needs to be respected more and also appreciated for the gift that it really is. All this stigma. You had posted a video on your gram about, and it was edutainment, and I laughed my ass off. The one where you're going through the woods, it's like the Blair Witch Project music. You're like, well, if you're going to call us dangerous, right? but it's like we laugh about it, but it's like sometimes I'm thinking, is the world waiting for me to just like lose my shit and just become so dangerous to people? It's like ridiculous that that's one of our
I
stigmas,
talked with my friends with DID because like everyone's like, oh, I'm so mad I could kill them. But when you have DID and they know you have DID, that's not something you say. Because like you don't even want them to accidentally take that literally. Like, no, there's no part of me. We don't even, that's one of our drafts that'll probably go up sometime this week. Like, we don't even kill spiders. Like, it's us like ushering this poor baby outside. Like, there's not that impulse in any of us. But the stigma is like, nope, can't even say I was so mad I'd kill him. Like, no.
The stigma is
and on parts of self, people are like, oh yeah, I have work me and party me. But like you were saying, does work me and party me have a different sexuality? Like, does work me and party me like have vehemently different like political ideas? And work me and party me, like, do you not remember what work me did when party me is there? Like, it's a little different.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. I like that. And I'm laughing because I'm just like, it's just so, the parts are just so unique in their own way with just too many differences. And, style of dress is like so minor compared to like the thought processes and who they want to spend time with. And that's a hard one for me. Like, in full transparency, like having certain people in my life, it's hard for me to get all system members on board with certain people in my life because there's such a lack of trust. And, it's very rare that all parts actually agree to put full trust into someone. So that's just something I still struggle with, is trust and attachment. And I get nervous when new people come into my life because they'll, usually they connect with age. Like, who wouldn't? Like 17 usually gets along with most people and is a badass, and people like hanging around her because she's a comedian. But, I get worried the closer people get because then the other parts start showing up, and it's not always delightful to interact with me, depending on who's out. Sometimes it's a beautiful thing. Other times it's like,
Right. Well, like you were saying, because this disorder has its roots in trauma, and literally we would not be here without it. Like, this is how we survived. It's a gift. That said, when the worst things that have ever happened to you are held by one or two alters, like, and they don't have awareness of the better things to kind of like ease their experience of the world, those alters can be a lot. And it can be a really hard adjustment for them to be functional in the world. A large part of our journey has been having trauma holders just learn to be comfortable in the body. And when JA first emerged from dormancy, like, she wouldn't be anywhere near the hubs, like different rooms, like would literally go into like fight or flight when he was in this, just shaking. And she is not quiet, so she's not like just shaking. She was like, oh, absolutely not, you can get out of here right now. And it was not easy. Fast forward a couple years, like they're good buds now, but that was not an easy process at all.
Yeah, same for me. My 13-year-old Blaine, almost destroyed my marriage more times than not. And it wasn't until, my husband could really come alongside Blaine and build a connection with that part, the marriage got better. But because they're invested in keeping all parts safe. And because they don't always understand, right, they do whatever they can to protect the system. I have a great deal of respect for protector parts because I know that they're doing what the system, is there to do. And I believe they can learn. I think parts grow up and evolve, and you can teach them new coping skills throughout the year. I think that's what health is for the parts, right? They get to learn new ways of coping and functioning in the world.
Exactly. I've had people say, what do you do with persecutor parts? And I was like, well, first, I don't think I think all persecutor parts are protectors with maladaptive coping mechanisms. They formed like everyone else to keep you alive. It's just that their skills for keeping you alive may have worked in these life and death traumatic situations, but in day-to-day life, they are maladaptive and they need to be able to update, just like all the other alters need to be able to update.
Right. Yes, that's a good metaphor as well. Here's a great question for us both. How do we learn to trust a sense of community?
That's a hard one, especially like you were saying, attachment disorder. Or insecure attachment. I talk about that a lot, like in my actual, like real life interactions, because I'll tell someone like, look, I have insecure attachment and it's telling me this, like, as a way to say, I would like to have community. My brain says that's unsafe and unlikely. And so I'm just telling you what's going on in my brain so we can walk through that together.
Right. Yeah. And for me, it's only really been in the last couple of years that I've exposed myself to different organizations and different communities. In terms of DID, it really started with an Infinite Mind out of Florida, like such a blessing, that community. And I feel like those of us within the actual DID community really do get it. Like, I've never interacted so well with such a group of kind, loving, respectful people that want to be respectful of other people's parts, right? Again, it's that unspoken language. In terms of other communities, it's taken a great deal of courage and a little bit at a time. I'm involved with some women in business things, just slowly starting to get to know people, and then building smaller community within those larger ones. And I just grant myself full permission that I'm probably not going to feel 100% safe. If I can feel safe enough and exit when I need to, or if I'm not feeling seen, heard, or validated, for just all kinds of different things, not because of DID. And I'm still just now starting to open up in community about DID. And that's harder. Because again, but the masking and hiding it is exhausting, and I'm not interested in doing that anymore either, right? So I think for people to know, like, I think it's about dipping your toe in a little bit at a time and getting to know people, and slowly, and not going in that you have to give full trust, just knowing that you probably won't have full trust if you can have little pieces. But I think at the end of the day, it's about trusting self and selves before anything else. You don't have to give your power away to any community. It can be, how do I feel? How does my body feel around these people? What am I hearing? What am I learning? Does this feel like a place for me or this part? Right? I think it's a process, and I think it takes a lot of trial and error.
Yes, trust is a slow growing plant, and the only way it grows at all is by, a little at a time. And for us, one of the first things that we learned when we first learned that we had DID, our alter E was very angry. She was very angry with the way that we had been doing community with some of the people in our life. And one of the things that helped to ease her was the concept that all relationship has pain. Like, there is no safe relationship ever. Like, we're all going to inadvertently do things that hurt one another. And so long as the relationship there's reciprocity and mutual respect, and when there is injury, there is repair. Like, that's being alive, that's being in a relationship. And so just taking the idea that there is a perfect relationship or a relationship without pain off the table allowed her to be like, okay. And then when we started being open with people so we could have community, we started with our safest people, and one person at a time. So when we had one person in our corner, we would reach out to somebody else. Okay, we got two people in our corner, then it's a little easier to reach out to someone else. And then if one of the people doesn't respond well, we have like a safety net of other people who are like, it's all right, we got you, you still have community. Because the thing is, not everybody will respond well, not everybody can wrap their heads around DID, or one of the only friendships I had that I lost was with someone who had a master's in psychology, and Lil like sent him a message and was like, "Hey, I'm Lil. This is what's going on." And he was like, "Yeah, I don't think I really believe that whole DID thing is a thing, but if it helps you to do that, that's fine." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, like there is no this is helping. Like it made everything more complicated and more difficult. Like, but it's what healing looks like, and it's better, it's more whole. This isn't something that I'm doing to cope with the trauma. This is what got me through the trauma."
Right. Again, I'm so sorry, and I'm disgusted to hear that that came from somebody in the field of psychology too, you know. And you also, to backtrack a few steps, you just gave me a gift, because Blaine was listening in the background going, "I never thought about things like that, about that there's always going to be some level of pain." So thank you for that. Appreciate that, because that part's really been struggling lately. Navigating gaslighting and invalidation. And you just brought up invalidation. That was one of the questions we had. Gaslighting for me is a huge trigger. I mean, it was my entire childhood. So instantly I'm just like, and Blaine, that usually brings Blaine about, and it's like, we're done.
Right.
We're done. The gaslighting is just mind fuckery. And the flipping of the script doesn't sit well with me.
For us, that goes back with like the first people we told were very, very safe people. So that way we had a safety net. So when other people did stuff like that, we're like, "Hey, wait though. We know what a good response looks like. We know what a supportive person looks like. We know what a trustworthy person looks like, and it is not this." We have so one of the things that's, I don't know, are interesting about DID is that denial is a large component of the disorder. And I tried to explain it to people saying, well, you have to be able to deny that the trauma happened. Nope, that didn't happen. That didn't happen to me. You have to deny the presence of alters. Like, it is a key component to developing the disorder. And when you learn that you have DID, the denial doesn't just go away. Like, the brain's like, so we keep a list on our phone, literally titled "Denial Helps," for when something triggers, whether it's somebody trying to gaslight us. Oh my gosh, the stupid McLean video, my brain went, and our husband was just like, "No." Like one of the things on our list, aside from being assessed by our therapist, aside from voices surprising us, is the hubs being like, "No, I've met, they are not you. Like you're so different. There's not even a comparison." Because even with amnesia, even with losing time, the brain still wants to go, "Nope, this isn't happening.
Yep.
Nope." We gaslight ourselves, like, so we have to have this list on our phone, and the support of the hubs, the therapist, for when those spirals happen, to like ground in the reality of, my brain did something different and it's okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you're bringing that up. It's like, it reminds me of Jane Hart, the one who did the Many Sides of Jane on her story. She wrote an article, I think it was for NAMI, on different ways to cope with DID. And one of them was like Post-it notes for reminders. But another one was like a reality-based journal, like putting in your truth, so that when those things do happen, just like what you're talking about with your phone, right? You can go back to that list. And thank goodness for husbands like yours and mine. Because mine will be like, who do you need me to talk to? Because I've talked to all of them. I know all of their names and stories. He's like, anytime you think you don't have the idea, you come talk to me.
Yeah, like, you remember that time you were eating your favorite food and you switched and you spat it out because you thought it was disgusting now? Because your tastes vary so wildly? Like, yeah, that's not fair. Like, right, that's not. That's just my brain trying to gaslight me.
Right. I know my poor husband will be like, I made blah, blah, blah for dinner, right? Like a steak or sushi. And then if a different part is out, that part will be like, I don't eat that. And then he's like, I just went and spent all this money, right, to make this beautiful meal. And this part doesn't want to eat it. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, again, right, a difference between a part that wants to eat something and a part that doesn't.
Work me and party me. Like, right? Does work you cook your favorite food and then party you go, that's disgusting and I will not eat it?
Right. I feel like you could write a little book on Jenna-isms or Gianu-isms. I think it'd be amazing. Speaking of, I am so excited to read this. Like Cats and Dogs. And did you all do this?
Thank you. No, we were traditionally published, and then our publisher folded, and we were not really happy with the cover art, even though they gave us the licensing to use it. So we went onto Fiverr, of all places, and found an amazing artist from there. And we were like, okay, we need the cutest looking puppy ever in a very annoyed cat.
Yes. So cute. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I can't wait to dive in. I'm very excited. Do you want to tell people a little bit about it and where they can find it too?
We're authors, and we have 2 books. We have a really dark thriller. It's about vampires, so they will eat you.
And in all transparency, I was going to order that one, but I get a little triggered by anything that.
And it is not.
Scary.
They don't sparkle. It is scary. They will eat you. As you read, you totally see some of like the dissociation in there. But this is its antithesis. Okay. This is light and fluffy and adorable. It's about a rescue cat whose family gets a puppy, and the cat is like, "Oh no, this is not acceptable." And both of them are on our website. There's a link tree in my bio, but the website is JECraft with a K.com.
Love it.
And
so I'm imagining that the puppy and the cat learn how to cooperatively work together.
It takes some extreme circumstances, but you know.
We wouldn't know anything about extreme circumstances. None.
No, you also have a book, but yours is not fiction. I would love to hear you talk about your book.
The One Soul, Multiple Expressions, the Poems by the Parts. Yeah, it's a collection of poetry that the Parts have been writing poetry on and off throughout the healing journey. And a lot of it is dark. So I always say trigger warning, immature content. I mean, there's a lot of light and fluffy stuff in there, and then there's some heavier, darker ones too. And I think mine is in my link tree and on my website as well. Yeah. And I'm, they're still kind of writing, and it'll be interesting to see what else I put out, to do that. But the cover art was actually their art with a graphic designer who put it all together. So it was their watercolor painting with that. I think it's like right here. Yeah, I usually have it. I have a couple I have to mail out, but yeah, so it looks like that. But does your system do a lot of art? Mine is obsessed.
That's another thing that really varies altar to altar. We're all artistic, but the expression of that art is like totally different. So I can only draw stick figures, and Lil, let me show you. She has done some of our, we have a,
Is that Dr. Nicole Black's journal?
She's got such great resources. But and in her journal is this place to draw pictures. And so Lil, I do stick figures. This is Lil artwork, like ridiculous. Like and then when we're blendy, it doesn't work. Like.
Oh, yeah, and I wanted you to talk about blendy spaghetti in a minute, but yes, I can relate to that. So I have a 15-year-old part that is an incredible cartoon artist, can draw like Charlie Brown and the characters from Alice in Wonderland, but if I'm not in that part, if that part's not around, forget it. It's not happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. Again, a different
right.
Work me in.
So here we have when Lil was drawing Debbie in the early days, and then he's had some healing, so we tried to update, but it wasn't Lil, and you can see like that it did not work. Like I cried.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, or switching during art is always an
yes,
interesting
yes,
experience. I've learned to like lovingly accept it and just let them make a mess. But in the beginning, I wanted to
yeah.
scream.
Oh yeah. Like because we are authors, like someone was like, well, how does that work with the different altars and the styles? And I'm like, oh, edits. Edits. Just go ahead and write, and then we'll fix it in post. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I totally get that. So yeah, so tell us about your stickers
Yes.
and the blendy
So,
spaghetti, because I love that.
that was a Giannuism. That was Lil. She was trying to explain what it was like when altars are blending, and you can't. She was like, it's blendy spaghetti in her brain because you can't tell where one noodle starts and the other one ends, and then that was it. Like she said it, and then that was like, anytime we're blendy spaghetti. Who's out blendy spaghetti? We're just a blendy spaghetti. And then, so when we started doing social media, one of the things that we learned is if you want something on a shirt, it's cheaper to have a merch store and print it out for yourself. So that's most of the stuff in our merch stores because we wanted a thing that said that. So we got an artist and we're like, hey, can you make this like a head that's got a plate of spaghetti in it because we need a shirt with that on it.
Yeah, Age feels like she needs to have her own clothing line. I'm like, I can't keep up with everything they need and want. I have one that wants to be in the court of law testifying, right, on behalf of survivors. I have another one that wants to start a clothing line, another one that wants to do a children's book. I'm like, guys, one thing at a time. It doesn't all have to happen tomorrow, you know? So it's like once they get going, they just get creative and that's it, which is great. I mean, that's the healing journey too, right? Is when they actually are wanting to utilize their energy to do those wonderful things rather than causing more stress, pain, and additional more trauma reenactment.
Right. Well, and that's the whole thing, right? When they find something outside of. So their whole existence is that thing that they were holding or that the brain sectioned off for them. And when they can find more to the world of that, and go, oh, freedom. You know, this was awful, but this thing over here gives me a reason to exist. Like, I love this. It lights me up, and I don't have to be this role or this thing. I can have more aspects to me. And my current aspect is I'm about to watercolor this all up. Like,
Right. Yeah, it's the welcoming and respect for all parts and their unique characteristics and their ability to be individuals within a collective system. And really, if we could, I'm not going to get political because I don't talk politics, but if we could just globally get the world, right, as a collective to be respectful, loving, and kind to all humans, man, right? I feel like because we've had to accept so many different contradictory things within our own system of parts. And that's, you know, I always tell people, like, I wasn't always a warm, loving, accepting person. It wasn't until I could really understand all of the parts that make up who I am, right? And really learn how to love and respect them for all of who they are and let them just be instead of trying to get them to be something that they're not.
Yes,
right?
Very much so. And like, to go from like, this is who I am, and then having to share your existence with somebody that is completely opposite really makes you more flexible, even if only by necessity, because then you can do that not only for yourself, but for other people.
Yes, yes. And that is healing.
Absolutely.
You know? Yeah. Amazing. I could hang out with you all day. I feel like we have so many different similarities. I don't know why. Between our earring collection and our arts, I think the parts would just have a blast.
If you are ever in this side, we shall hang out.
Over in, you're on Instagram Live.
We're in Tennessee, and Tennessee's a very big state. So, but if you're ever in Tennessee, we shall hang out.
Very cool. I love that. Well, and I hope to see you at the Healing Together conference at some point in the future too, either in person or virtually or something. you know, I just think it'd be amazing to have you there as part of that community. Before we say goodbye, is there any, I want to make sure we got to everything that maybe you wanted to talk about, or any of your parts, if they had anything they wanted to make sure.
I think we got to everything. Is there any other thing from your poll that people were interested in?
Yeah, we have one more I didn't cover, which was how do you and this is a harder one, but how do you decide who to tell, and if you are going to therapy or other medical providers, do they have to know? So these are both heavily loaded questions. There's no right answer, but we can both weigh in on our perspectives.
So learning who to trust, who to tell is a process. Honestly, outside of like, you know, the fam that you know is your ride or die, like the Hubs is like with me through anything, like so outside of people who you know are your ride or die, I have found the LGBTQIA community to be the most open to understanding and accepting. And that doesn't mean that you would, you know, the whole community is safe and loving and accepting, but they know what it is to be stigmatized. They know what it is to live in a closet. They know what it is to feel like they have to hide who they are. And so I find in general, if you have a friend that is in that community, there'll probably be a safer bet to wade into those waters with. And other than that, it's really just like you try and you hope. And sometimes you find out someone you really thought was a friend isn't in there with you. And that's difficult.
Yeah. I never really understood the concept of allies until I came forward with my lived experience of what people consider a mental health condition. I see it as mental greatness, but that's how I've reframed it, because, you know, I look at all the things I can do in the world, and not everybody can do that if you don't live with multiple parts. And so, you know, I feel like disclosure is a process, and it's unique to everyone. And I think it should be thought out, and the why, whether you're disclosing to a friend or publicly. I always think it's important to understand the why and to challenge any hopes, wishes, and expectations, because it can be absolutely devastating if you finally get the courage to tell someone and it's not received and it's invalidated, right? So kind of some grounding, and like what you're talking about earlier about like knowing who your support people are. So if you open up a little more to someone else and it doesn't go well, you have like a landing zone or other people to hold that space for you, because you don't want to just keep closing yourself off to the world either, right? It's like very intricate, and you want to try to find different people in different communities that are going to be accepting. And I always tell people, like, take your time, and most importantly, have system agreement before you go telling people, because it's so dysregulating to the system of parts if not all the parts are ready to share something like that. It's a big deal. It can be very, when I say dangerous, like just you can make you mentally unwell if your parts are not in agreement with sharing, right? And then the question around, do your doctors have to know? This is a hard one, right? Because as we've seen, not all medical and mental health professionals even believe that the condition exists. So it can be scary to share. And I think navigating that delicately, and sometimes it's more about sharing that you've been through trauma, less about the label of the diagnosis and more about you've been through trauma and why you might react to some things. I can give a recent example with like going to get, I never had like my eyelashes curled or whatever, and I wanted to try it. Well, because of my trauma history and some things, you know, with my eyes being covered, again, trigger warning, to lay down and do that, my whole body had a reaction. Now, I did have system agreement to try it, and I let my professional know. And she knows me somewhat. She knows I'm out in the world speaking, but I just let her know, like, if I seem off, it's because this is a lot for me to have my eyes closed and to have you poking at everything. And I was fidgety, and I was, you know, switching in and out. She didn't notice that, but I felt every minute of it. But because she was really gentle and kind, and, you know, that was helpful to just let somebody know that I had experienced trauma, so they could just have an understanding that my reaction was not about them, and to just proceed with caution in a loving and kind way. So I'd like to empower people that whether you're going to a medical appointment or something else, you can let people know you've experienced trauma if you're not ready to, and even that has some, there's pros and cons there. You have to be careful, but I think it's, it doesn't have to be everything all at once,
exactly,
you know?
100%. That is exactly the advice we
sense.
give as well. We tell people, like, if you go in, lead with symptoms. We had a dentist appointment where the dentist kept being like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." So, you know, if you're going to be in a triggering situation, to be like, "Hey, you know, I've got some PTSD and I might get triggered, and so I might kind of zone out. I'm okay. I'll be fine." If you know, like, you age regress, you can be like, "Hey, I've got some trauma stuff, and if I get like triggered, I might just grab my stuffed animal," and that's fine. That's just me kind of working through my own stuff. So leading with symptoms so that people know what to expect usually puts them more at ease without them having to know all the intricacies.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point. And to know when you need to call it. So I'll give an example. When I went to the dentist, they abruptly switched the providers on me, and I proceeded, and then it didn't end well. I actually had to get up in the middle of my appointment and reschedule because it was just too much. And that's okay. You know, we're not always going to get it right. Even those of us who are further along on the healing journey, right? Like, sometimes things still happen. And number one, I always say, take care of the parts, right? You don't have to force yourself to proceed with something you may not be ready for if it's going to be re-traumatizing, right? Yeah. Well, this was just delightful to hang out with you and meet you earlier this morning, and then talk with you all during this live. And I know we discussed, because I wanted to be respectful, if you're okay with posting this, then we can both do that. I think it can be really powerful for the community. And again, I'm so sorry for what happened with the McLean situation, and I'm so in awe that you continue to show up despite all of that, and despite the trolls and the comments. And thank you for being an inspiration to my system, because I sometimes feel like I'm brave, and I know that I am, but you take vulnerability to the whole next level, and I hope that I can get there, because I know what we're both trying to do in terms of help other people feel less alone is far more important than any professional image that people have of me. You know, like, that's part of my journey that I'm still working on, is people have this idea about who Dr. Fletcher is, and it's like, well, if you don't accept all of the parts that make up Dr. Fletcher, then I don't know what to tell you. You know, like, I can't continue to silence my parts or walk on eggshells to make other people comfortable, because then I'm not living my best life.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. So I did pick out a quote. Are you a Maya Angelou person? It's okay if you're not. Okay, I thought we could, well, before I read the quote, is there anything else you wanted to say to anybody who's listening or that might watch later? Or I always like to leave people with some hope and some
one, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And to say to other people, always, if you're, you know, like, struggling, it gets better. It doesn't always stay like that. Like, I know for me, when it was my darkest, I thought it would never, ever get better. And it was so hopeless, and it gets better. So hang in there.
Yeah. Yeah, agree. Amen. And ditto to all of that. It does get better. And you do have to keep working on it. And you got to ask for help and lean on support and a willingness to try again, right? Whether that's with people, friendships, coping skills, you know, to get the parts to keep trying, because you can eventually get to a really good place of communication and really acknowledging all those parts. So I just felt like, because there's so much stigma, I wanted to end with this quote, because for you and I, and for everyone else living with DID, whether they're out or choosing to not be, because that's their choice, and I respect either, right? This is a Maya Angelou quote that I love. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I rise. Maya Angelou. Yeah. So keep on the journey. I have a feeling you and I are going to remain connected, which I feel so blessed for. And I can't wait to dive into this. And I know we'll probably talk soon. So thank you again for being here, for your time, and for your vulnerability. You're welcome. And thanks for all who tuned in. Bye, y'all.
Hey, it's Jenna with the Gianu system. Why? Why? Tell me why